So, Ryan, I wanted to welcome you first and thank you for being a guest here on the summit. The reason why I thought it would be great to have you to come on is because for the last, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years, you've done the Speaker Hub
I
podcast.
think we're at
The,
like 7 years.
there we go. For the last 7 years, you've been
Maybe
the
eight.
host, maybe eight, but at least 7 years, you've been the host of the World of Speakers podcast with Speaker Hub. But that's not the only podcast that you've run. You have built your own personal brand around hosting topical, niche centered podcasting. I know you love golf. I know you love sailing around the world. I just found out you love ramen, but all of those things are what make you you, right? And I would love for you to come on today and to talk about how podcasting can be used to magnify those things that you find fun and build your brand around that. Because I think speakers, they all have a brand, but they're just not always magnifying the things that make them stand out. So give us a little bit of your background so that they know who they're listening to, and then we'll take the conversation forward from there.
Sure. Well, ahoy. It's great to be here. And I think that if you get to know me, you'll learn that I wear my freckles on my sleeve. And it wasn't always that way. I actually had some really bad mentorship early on who said, get the most expensive looking car and try to fake it because it'll all work out. And I'll share with you, it did not work out. Worked out really bad. That car ended up being the car that I got a DUI in. That car got repossessed. My house got repossessed. I lost everything. And I really went down hard. And it wasn't until a long way into sort of trying to bounce back that I started to actually be honest about where I was at. And that opened up the world because it was for the first time that instead of sort of pretending that I knew what I was doing and just sort of assuming, like acting as if, I'd be a little bit more curious and be like, actually, I might need some help here. And as soon as I did that, then people would be like, well, how can I help you? And so when we talk about authenticity, I think it's about being true to that person that you are on that average. And we all put on these personas, we all take on these roles. You know, you're different when you're interacting with your parents or your children or somebody who's a boss and somebody who's a coworker. Like there's all these levels. And so I just found it so refreshing to just be more of the real me the whole time. And so it was this concept of what my book is called Ditch the Act, is really that key to authenticity. And so for a long time, I've been just sharing online and sharing my voice. And the voice comes across as podcasting. It comes across as writing. It comes across as what used to be tweeting is now Xing. It comes across in pictures of my adventures and things like that. So to get to know me is to know that like I really had bad advice for a while. And the best advice I got was to be true to who I want to be and enjoy the things that I like to do. And when you share that over time in little bits, which I actually call brand crumbs, just like breadcrumbs, right? They just disappear after a certain amount of time. If you keep feeding brand crumbs and people get to know you without actually meeting you, then that's the first foundation to having them figure out whether or not they like you. Not everybody has to like you. And then if they get to know you and then they make a decision to like you based on that, then it sets a foundation for trust, and you can't download trust. So for me, you know, my childhood was also something that shaped me because I have freckles. I'm a ginger. I'm very proud of it, and actually, that's usually part of my intro is just being a ginger. And a ginger is again usually a derogatory term for somebody with red hair and freckles. And as a kid, I was the only ginger in my school, and I became the outcast. So I literally got bullied out of one school, went to another school only to be the only ginger there, and then got bullied out of that back to where I was. And it took a long time to kind of come to terms with life, the fact that like, hey, maybe I look a little bit different. Maybe this is how I roll. But I owned that process, and I think that what people make fun of you for, or what maybe you're self-conscious of, is what makes you special, is what makes you unique. And so if you're a speaker with X type of thing that you think is off, that's the actual thing that's going to make you memorable. There's a lot of speakers that speak on authenticity, but they're not all gingers, and they don't all like sailing, and they don't all have these things. So for me, this idea of sharing who you are, and it's a medium to get people to get to know you. And so that's probably more about the concept of getting to know me than actually getting to know me. But, I think you'll get to know me a little bit more here as we share some stories of how these podcasts have helped me to claim and own and grow and participate in the narrative that I'm choosing for myself, as opposed to other people making decisions without my involvement.
No, I think that that's really important. While you were describing that, what came to mind was that a lot of times in the business world, as a speaker or as an entrepreneur, people only see one facet of the diamond, right? If we look at our personalities as diamonds, there's many little square facets around it, and they all shine at different times, right? And sometimes we're trying to focus that diamond to only show that one facet. We don't want to show the entire facets of life that we live, because some of them we're not so proud of, and some of them we haven't won as much in as we've won in the other ones. I know a lot of people who are great business people, but they're horrible dads or horrible moms. But I know people that are great moms and they couldn't care about business. They don't even want to make any money. They just want to spend time with their kids. But those are different facets of life that I think you've become very comfortable with, and you're not afraid to show. You talk about everything. You were telling me about like 900 cases of ramen that you
Yeah, well,
was
60,
able to.
that's about all I can fit in the car. But
6,900. That's about the same.
actually, probably 900 units in those 60 cases.
Yeah,
But
like it's like
I want to talk
900 packets.
I want to talk about your diamonds, because I think three is a magical number. That's why there's three pigs and three blind mice, and it's just easy to comprehend. And so when I look at an authentic personal brand, there's three, as you're saying, diamonds, and I call them these. Let's call them facets, right?
Mhm.
One is how you want to be known professionally, and that's usually the one that we tend to lead with. But there's also how you want to be known from a personality standpoint, and then there's what you like to do for fun when you're not working. And I've found that when you at least make an initial decision on what the top levels are for those for you, then it actually helps you to guide into what type of content to lean into. And the medium is your choice of how you like to create content. So I always tell people, if you create content in a medium that you do not enjoy creating, it's going to be miserable. And so it's like, why would you start a podcast if you're not, if that's not something you're into, right? Why would you try to make videos if you're afraid of making videos? Now, I would say that with practice, you always get more comfortable, but you start with the type of content that you're most comfortable with. Sometimes that's writing. And so wherever it starts, if you help define what you want to be known for professionally, for me, it's always been a speaker, because that drags the line to everything else I do. For me, my personality, I'm high energy. I'm a ginger. And so like, that's a core part of what I do. I'm on stage, all of like, it just comes out naturally. Right. And then from what I like to do for fun, I love to sail. I love to be on the ocean. Now I love a lot of other things, but that's a good starting point to then build your brand around. And to bring this back to why we're talking here today about podcasting. Okay. If you align the content that you enjoy creating, and I love to speak, so podcasting is a great medium for me, then you can create content that helps people get to know you, your personality, your professionalism, which is your expertise, and then your experience, which is how you go throughout life. So I love to sail. I have a podcast called Good Jibes, where I talk to West Coast sailors, sponsored by a 40-year-old physical sailing magazine. So if I'm looking and following news on sailing, I see somebody, I'm like, oh my God, I would love to talk to that person. Then I reach out to them and say, would you like to come on my podcast? Now I have a brand halo effect with all of his community as he shares. And then they learn about me, and they also know that I'm a sailor. And that is great, because then they start to get to know me. And how does this lead to business? Some of the biggest deals that I've closed have gone like this. Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Ryan, talking about whatever else. Something comes up about sailing. Maybe we talk for like 45 minutes about sailing. And then it's like, oh, by the way, what do you do? And it's like when you make a connection with somebody, whether it's sailing or whether it's hiking or camping or a football team or something, like you connect with people. And so I have a podcast about sailing. It helps people get to know me about my passions. I have a podcast about speaking, the world of speakers. And so I just love talking with speakers about speaking. And when people hear it, they know that I'm a speaker. And then I love startups and core messaging. And I'm really big on clarity of thought to be able to have clarity of what you do. Because you can have the best idea in the world, Ron, but if you can't explain it in a succinct or compelling way, it's just no longer the best idea. So I have a podcast around that, and I can hold the space and talk about these things that I'm passionate about, that I'm involved with. I'm able to tell my story. I'm able to learn. And literally, when people go, "You have 3 podcasts?" I'm like, "Yeah. Well, I love to speak, so I've got one about that. I love to sales, so I've got one about that. And I love to help startups." So when you align the content with the stuff that you're interested in, with the stuff that you're an expert in because of your experience, it just helps people get to know you. And people want to do business with people who they know, like, and trust. People want to hire speakers who they feel like they know, who they like, and who they trust with the audience. Because then I've learned a lot about speaking and getting stages. And the event planner is just more concerned that you're going to mess things up for them than anything else. And you're gaining their trust that you're not going to drop the ball. You're not going to get them fired. And that, again, comes down to trust. It's not about, "I'm the best speaker and I've got the best performance." They want you on stage, because a good talk, there's build up beforehand, there's actual talk, and there's all the lingering that happens afterwards.
Man, there's so many gems in that, especially about being event planner insurance, as I like to call it, right? It's like, because I mean, they're being judged. They're like, dude, if I can imagine I get on stage and I'm like, "What up, mother?" And they like, "Hey, wait a minute. We asked for Ron, not Samuel L. Jackson, right?" And so depending on who the host is, you have to build that relationship and make sure that they're not putting their job on the line. So that was one thing I thought was great. The other thing is that you make this feel like your podcast are conversations that you would have even if you weren't recording them.
Yes, it's a double up on time. It's called overlap, right? Where if I
Go
can
tell me
spend
more about that.
So people really are curious how I create so much content. You have 3 podcasts. You have a full-time job as a director of the Entrepreneur Center, helping 27,000 undergraduates at UCI starting their own businesses. You have a consulting company yourself. You are speaking as well. And the answer to all of that is overlap. The things that I enjoy doing, if it overlaps as a podcast, it overlaps as content, it overlaps as like a number of things in other facets and capacities. And so an example is that I was out sailing and some things went wrong, and it was an adventure, and it was a real life amazing moment and experience with friends. And then it became a blog, and it became a podcast, and it's something I still talk about and I refer people to, and people are still reading it and hearing it and listening. And again, it's like things that I'm already doing that I'm excited about. Because if you're creating a podcast and it's not fun or it's miserable, and Ron, you've heard those podcasters. They're like, you just tell. It's just, they're maybe in it for some ulterior motive that they think they know, and they're just like going through the motions. And you're like, dude, why are you doing this? Do it because like you're excited about it, because you want to learn from people, because you want to share, and you want to get people to know you. That's it. That's really the key, I think. And so if you're authentic and you choose a medium and you're able to be yourself, you can do that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you left us with a cliffhanger, man. You said something that not all the time do we get to meet Ryan the Sailor Man, right? We don't get to meet Popeye in real life. You had an adventure, and I think I know the story because we talked about when you got back from sailing, but everyone else
There's
doesn't
a
know
few
the story.
adventures, but yeah,
But-
yes.
So let's hear some sailing stories, man. Let's make this interesting. Talk about your passion. What happened on the boat that you were alluding to?
Well, before I tell this story, let me go back to one of the things you were mentioning before about these different facets and people not wanting to share certain things. We tend to not want to share the bad stuff because maybe we're embarrassed by it. We tend to realize that we're losing more than we're winning. And so we don't know why we would post on LinkedIn or why we would share it. But the reality is that people don't care about your story of success. They care about how they see themselves in your story. And more people have lost the lotto than have won. But if if more people have had businesses fail than businesses bought. And so if you can share stories, because a lot of times people, I don't know what to share. Think of when something went wrong, and that is a great foundation for a story, because experience is what you get after you need it. And if you're not out there doing things and getting bruises and getting bricks to the face, you truly will never learn what that is. And so people are talk about their expertise, but it comes across as braggy. You have to be careful, like, oh, I'm an expert in this, and I'm an expert in this, and I'm an expert in this. People look at you with a side eye and be like, what? But if you're like, well, you want to know about my leadership style? Let me tell you a story when I was not a good leader. And here's what happened. And here's what I learned. And here's now how I've changed because of it. And the reason I'm telling you this is because this is what I've learned from it. And so podcasting is a series of questions and stories. And if you want to be a good podcast host, you ask good questions and you tell and you pull stories. You know what? Every single one of my podcasts, they all start the exact same. Every single one. Before I introduce and say, here's the person with this type of accolade and here's their expertise, I literally ask them to share a story that shaped them. I share a sailing story that shaped you. Share a speaking story that shaped you, and then share a business story that shaped you. And in that amount of time where they're sharing like just some random one moment in time, you get to know them so much more than just sort of these accolades. And have you always been like that? And it just all of a sudden makes sense. And so if you can share your stories in a way to showcase your experience, people will see you as an expert without calling yourself an expert. So here we are sailing out, and it's about 2:00 in the afternoon. The wind is picking up on my 1977 Cal 34 sailboat. So the engine is from 1977. So it kind of looks a little rusty. It's a little raggedy, but the whole boat is beautiful and she's heavy and strong. I have two friends sailing with me. One who has never been on a sailboat before. I have another who has sailed lots of small boats, but never a boat this big. Now, we are all entrepreneurs. It's key to understand in this story about entrepreneurship. We're out there and we're cruising along. Great sailing weather. We have both the sails up and we're just pinned over like 45 degrees. We're loving life. It's windy. We are just purely in the elements. And this huge triple-masted boat comes to our starboard on our right. So they have the right of way. And I can't stay in front of him and I have to go behind him. So I kick on the engine to give myself more pointing maneuverability. And this is maybe only like 5 minutes or so that I'm doing it. And literally smoke starts coming from out of the cabin. And smoke on a boat, fire is not good. Literally shut the engine down, jump in there. It's billowing smoke. I get my dive light. I'm looking for any flames. I've got the fire extinguisher and there's no flames, but there's this noise that sounds like the engine's still running. I'm like, shut off the engine, shut off the engine. They're like, no, it's not running, it's off. And it was the coolant that was boiling out of the radiator everywhere. And all the steam was from all the coolant because the thing had overheated. And you looked at the temperature and it was pinned all the way over past 240. Here we are in the middle of the ocean. The engine has completely overheated. We have to wait a few hours for it to actually cool down to when we start it again and there's no water coming through it, which means it continues to heat up. So we get and we sail to the island and the wind basically dies before we get there. So then we're forever waiting to catch some sort of breeze to get to the shore so we can anchor. We finally got there after a lot of patience and time. We had no reception, our radio wouldn't work, and all we had was our 1977 manual and a couple self-help books. So here we are with some Stone IPA after a long trip using a 1977 manual and no internet reference to try to figure out what the hell is going on with the engine. And we take it all apart and we find that the impeller was completely fried, melted piece. So we had to travel to a place where people were camping to convince someone to use their jet ski. I told him I'd buy him a tank of gas to get me to another spot on the island where I had a boat that we could go to another spot to possibly find an engine piece. It was not there. We went to the other side of the island. We found the piece. We installed it. We thought we were good and it still didn't work. And then we spent till 1:30 in the morning, again, with no reception and just the manual to put it all together. And then it worked. And then we got to where we initially wanted to go. And it was the most miraculous adventure where every time we hit another struggle, we'd look at each other and be like, let's figure this out. Let's do this. We are entrepreneurs. We can figure this out. And so it was a story of high drama in all respects, but we were cool as a cucumber the whole time. And the reason I'm telling you the story is that whether you're on a sailboat or not, the people who are around you, whether they're experienced or not, you will run into issues. And it's not about the issue, it's about how you work as a team. What if you had no reception? What if you had no internet? What if you just had to deal with the people and places around you to make things work? And I'm telling you, we had way more fun that trip than if everything would have been perfect. So embrace the burnt impeller, embrace the things that go wrong, because that's what makes things exciting. And there's that story.
Dude, that reminds me of that old TV show Survivor. Right?
Yeah, Survivor on the water. There we go.
You remember? Yeah, and you had to figure out and solve these tasks within a certain amount of time, and you had no internet. And no, it's cool. What's the name of the boat? Is the boat called the Entrepreneur Ship?
No. But I am putting together my next book series is going to be getting your ship together. And so I'm starting with showmanship, and then thought leadership, and then entrepreneurship. That's going to be the third one.
No, that's incredible.
Her name is Bingo 2.
Okay. And what's the significance of that? Did you name it, or was it already named when you bought it?
It's a funny story behind it. I had a sailboat before, which we didn't have a name for. It was a 25-foot Erickson, 1984. And at the time, my parents had a boat in front of their house that all of a sudden disappeared one day. So somebody stole my parents' boat, and the only other boat we had to go find it was my sailboat, but it didn't have a name for it. And so we used my sailboat to go search around for this other boat at night, and we were really like sketched because we were just afraid to see if somebody was on it. And then my sister and I think she said it. She's like, Ryan, if you see it, ignore it and just say the code word bingo. I was like, all right. And so we're like cruising around trying to find it with the code word. We search for hours. We come back. We're doing a U-turn to get back into our slip. And my sister goes, bingo, 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 bingo. We're like, what? And the boat was right there. It was just across the way. So whoever got it or stole it, if it got untied, it was right where we had started the whole time. And so the word bingo just became like solidified into the whole. And then, I don't know, our second boat just became Bingo 2.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I mean, dude, there's so many like narratives. There's like the pirates, you're going to get your boat back. you're on Survivor, you have to rebuild an engine in the dark at 1 a.m. But I think it all talks about perseverance, right? And I think it's one of the most underrated characteristics of a person nowadays. Nowadays, everything seems like it's right away. I want it tomorrow. And the ability to persevere, regardless of what's going on, is what usually separates the winners from the losers. So let's talk about that for a little bit, because you've been the podcast host for 7 years. The average podcast lasts 6 episodes. What kept you going for 7 years with the World of Speakers podcast?
Well, it's funny. I was actually at Social Media Marketing World back in 2015, and I went to one of Pat Flynn's workshops on podcasting, and he literally threw out that figure. He said 90% of podcasts don't make it past 7 episodes. I think you said 6, but he said 7. And I was just like, that is unbelievable, right? That's crazy. And so he said, if you can make it past 7 episodes, you're better off than 90%. Now, the kind of a fun backstory on the World of Speakers podcast, where it started, I was doing a TEDx project for TEDx LA. It was called the City of Speakers. And I went around in Los Angeles with a microphone in the street, and I asked 385 or 6 people one question. What's your voice? What do you mean? Just a simple question. What do you say? I got 385 or 6 different answers. Some people went on forever. Some people said one word, but I took all the audio and I smashed it into one 12-minute track. And then I came up with an actual talk about what I learned, the power of the voice, by asking people what their voice was. So it was super meta. It was emotional. I was a wreck by the end of it, but it was so powerful because you have all these people answering and you're talking. It was this whole cool thing. Amazing. I got some good publicity and traction around it because it was kind of a creative look at your voice. And some guy from Brussels reached out, the prior owner, Andreas, and he was like, hey, this sounds like really cool. We've got this awesome public speaking platform we're launching, and maybe there's a way we can work together. I said, well, I was thinking about turning this into a podcast called The City of Speakers. And he's like, well, we're more global. And I was like, well, what if it's the world of speakers? And that's how sort of the genesis was born, right? It didn't just all of a sudden show up. It was this persistently pursuing this passion of mine of what, like how powerful the voice is. And for me, speaking, that's my sharpest tool. And I continue to get it sharper. And for people, the way you communicate is everything in business and relationships. So I was just going down this rabbit hole, but persistently chasing. And when we started that, I'll never forget. I was just like, I just got to get past 7 episodes. That's it. And we did, and we're at 100 plus now. And I've got over 150 of our good jibes, and I've got 89 or 90 with my 313 challenge. And so for me, this concept of persistence is just as important as talking about the importance of using podcasts as a medium for building an authentic brand, because you can start a podcast and not get past 7 episodes, and all of it is for naught. I think this is still around the 2014-15 time, and I was on Instagram but had never posted. I wanted to be on social media but didn't know what to post, and I was wanting to become a professional speaker but didn't know where to start. Somebody bought me a ticket to Tony Robbins' Unleash Your Power Within. I had heard of Tony Robbins, never been a fan, and I was just like, okay, you bought me this $500 ticket. I'm really trying to kind of search for some meaning and purpose of my content, where I want to go. So I went. If you've ever been to something like that, it's amazing. 10,000 people, there was a lot of unleashing of power. And there was one particular challenge that stood out that is relevant to podcasting that people here can listen and take, and they didn't have to be there. He said a lot of stuff, but this is one of the things I remembered. He said, if you don't know what to do right now, but you want to do something, then you do 2 things. You find something that you can do every single day. No matter what, you do it. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 5 minutes. Make it achievable. Whatever it is, just every single day you do it no matter what. The second thing you do, come up with a big, hairy, scary, crazy goal. Something that's going to take you 3 or 5 years at minimum to achieve. And I was looking at my notes, and this big binder of all these things. And I see all my notes, and I notice all of these stick figures everywhere. And I was like, I've always drawn stick figures. I'm just a note taker. I was like, stick figure. I could draw a stick figure every day. I could draw a stick figure every day. That's what I'm going to do. And this 3 to 5 years, like I want to write a book. I want to write a book, but I don't know exactly what about. I've got this 313 method. I want to write a book. And so my first Instagram post is doing a jump sidekick, because I'm a martial artist. So a jump sidekick in the air behind the banner that is the I walked on coals fire display. And it was my first Instagram post ever. I have decided I will draw a stick figure every day. And for something like 7 years straight, I drew a stick figure every single day. And then I had thousands of them.
Still drawing
and then
them now?
I draw them. Honestly, not every day, but I'm illustrating these books that I'm doing. It's more for the fun of it. If you search my name, you'll see stick figures everywhere. I have a stick figure store. I stick figure all my keynotes. People get this. You know what? Sometimes it's a fancy keynote, and they're like, you have to use this font and all these things. I go back and I'm like, so I hand draw all of my slides. This shouldn't be an issue, right? They're like, what? I'm like, I have no text. I just hand draw everything. And they're like, oh, well, I guess you can do that. So what I'm trying to say is, and the reason I'm telling you this story, no matter what you do, just find something to do every single day, and then some big, hairy, scary goal that you can work towards. And it is the persistence. So don't focus on starting a podcast. Focus on, thinking for a certain amount of time every day, or doing something in small bits, because that's the only way it's going to start, grow, and become sustainable at the end of the day.
Dude, I just Googled those stick figures. Incredible. They are amazing.
Yeah, I've also got stick figure NFTs if you want to buy them. If you got some Bitcoin you want to throw my way, let's do it.
Well, I don't have any Bitcoin, but I think that there's some other stuff you can help us with, because literally 2 months ago, I was talking to our designer, and I'm like, hey, do you know an illustrator that can kind of draw out some of our frameworks? And she was like, oh, I think my cousin could do it, right? But her cousin never followed up with us. I think what I've been looking for maybe right in front of us.
I'll show you. I've actually done 24 by 36 in real life posters that map out entire crazy dynamic sequences of social media strategy, whatever else it is. I my biggest passion is simplicity, because to keep things simple is to make them powerful. And I talk too much. I talk too fast. I'm always trying to be more concise, but there's nothing more concise than circles, lines, and dots to make something come to life in black and white. And it's just such an amazing challenge of simplicity. So if you go to my Instagram at ryan.foland, you scroll for 7 years and you'll see stick figures.
Yeah, I'm on your Twitter right now and I see him.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what I
that'll
found.
do it too. Yeah.
I found the Twitter and I'm like, wait a minute, is this the guy behind the ClickFunnels drawings? Because ClickFunnels uses a lot of stick figures in their illustrations to show Russell's frameworks. And I thought
No,
that was some
this is
fancy
me. These
computer
are
font.
original. You can tell there's a particular way that I've just gone that I've drawn. And I started just with a Sharpie marker and pieces of paper, and I'd take a picture of it and I'd upload it. And eventually, once the iPad Pro came out with the iPad Pencil, it became such a realistic feeling that I was able to draw digital. But for the first few years, I was literally Sharpie markers. I'd go through them. I'd buy them in the economy packs. I just like drawing. So how does this relate to podcasting? It has everything related to podcasting. If you're passionate about sharing your expertise, then share your experience. And the best way to share your experience is through sharing stories that got you your expertise. It's more relatable. It's actually more fun to talk about. It's things that once you go out there and share what didn't go right, people now know. It's almost like this event planner insurance. When people try to hire you, okay, whether it's for a job or a stage or anything, let's just say it's the same thing. They're not hiring you to make mistakes. That's why you have to have a certain amount of years of experience. It's not like some weird gatekeeper. It's that I don't want to pay you for you to make that mistake. But if you can share that you already made that mistake and that now you're better because of it, because you've learned, that's your experience, and you hire people who are experienced. Again, it all comes down to finding things that you're excited about, that you can share, who you genuinely are. I get so excited about sailing stories. I'm thinking back, I'm like, I was just but that's because like it was exciting. And we talked initially about some people who show up on podcasts. You're like, wow, that energy was kind of low. It's because there wasn't that natural excitement and storytelling. And it's just like, so tell me the best advice that you have. And it's just like, so that I love conversations. And so these podcasts are just that. Tell me a story about yourself, and then let's dive in.
No, this is cool, man. I'm looking at Stick Figure Press, and it brought back so many flashbacks to when I was a kid. And I used to love to doodle and draw. And then as I got older, I kind of got away from it, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, this is incredible. Like these ideas, the way that you illustrated, like hope is not a strategy, right? And I'm like, it's the one guy, he's like this, and he's praying, and the other guy is just climbing a ladder. He's like, look, I'm not going to sit here and wait. I'm going to just get up out of here, right? Like the simplicity, but the profound message that can be illustrated when they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Yeah, you do a great job.
With inflation, it's probably like 1,100 words. Let's be real.
No, that's pretty cool.
But look at this relatability, right? A stick figure, like it's, again, maybe something is like, we're going to listen to a professional speaker who is a consultant who runs this thing. It's like, yeah, I draw stick figures and I'm a ginger and I love to sail. Like that keeps it interesting, right? It's not just about the content. It's about people wanting to listen to you actually interview someone. And I'm not going to say any names, okay? But I had some friends who were recently on a podcast, and it was a podcast that is a massive podcast from an actual viewer perspective. And it was the first time I'd listened to the podcast, and I love my friends and I really enjoy hearing their stories. But something about the way that the podcast host, it just didn't really resonate with me, like the way that he went about it. And it just is a reminder that your podcast is a way for people to get to know you and your guests. And so again, you don't have to like everybody. You don't have to like every podcast. You can't listen to every podcast. But if you focus on not the number of listeners, but you focus on getting consistent episodes and coming up with a system to make it easier for your guests and finding connections that make sense for you to build your brand and to surround yourself with those people, it's really the power of proximity if you can get past those 7 episodes. When,
No,
when you get past that episode, number 7.
so this is a perfect transition. We're launching the new season of World of Speakers, right? And you have some pretty incredible guests that you've interviewed. We're going to be adding an additional version. Up until now, it was audio only. So we're going to be adding a video component where people can watch the video versions of the podcast. You want to tell them a little bit more about World of Speakers and your other 2 podcasts as we close?
Yeah. So let's leave World of Speakers to the end. That's the big most relevant prize. So if you're interested in sailing and sailing stories, there's a lot to learn out on the sea. Good Jibes is a podcast where we talk with West Coast sailors. You can hear my documented stories and just crazy life stories out there. And you just go to latitude38/good jibes, or just search for it. My 313 challenge, if you're an entrepreneur, and that is a speaker as well, and you have a hard time articulating what you do, you're not going to get as far and as fast as you want. And so I have this methodology called the 313, which takes your business and helps you to explain it, articulate it in 3 sentences, down to 1 sentence, and ultimately 3 words. And people hire me for this consulting, but if they either can't afford it, or if they are willing to have it be a public conversation, then it's like a live coaching session where each time you hear this whole process develop, so many ahas, so many relatable moments, so much energy, and that's super exciting for core messaging. The World of Speakers is literally helping you to stand on the shoulders of giants. And the show's structure, I think, speaks for it all. We get to know them from a story, and some of these stories are incredible because sometimes we see some of these speakers and we're like, wow, like you're so amazing, or I love what you do, but you don't realize the struggle that they had to get there. You don't realize the roadblocks that they had there. You don't realize like the stuff that you might be related to right now. Like I'm having that happened to you. So just, if anything, is inspiring to know everyone has a different path to that stage. And then I ask them to dive into their best public speaking tips. And I warn them, if this is some like know your audience, or if this is like speak with authority, like, no, this is the most nuanced. And then they answer and I'll be like, no, but that's still general. Let's go deeper, 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 deeper. And so you get these really art of speaking tips, from the way people warm up, to how they structure, to how they present, to how they do all of the speaking. Then we talk about something that is crucial if you want to build a speaking business, which is how do you get more stages? How do you market yourself? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And so you get to know somebody, you get to know their best tips on the art of speaking, which is relevant at any level. And then if you're at a spot where you're growing your business, we give you all kinds of insights and tips. So people ask me all the time for public speaking advice, and I will say very gladly, I'd love to help you. Imagine if you could have been in on the conversations that helped me to get to where I am today. What if you could get them directly from the source? Go to World of Speakers, wherever you get your podcast, and start from episode 1. And if you truly want my advice, you listen through them and you'll have everything that I have and more. And I've got a lot, and it's because I've met a lot of amazing speakers. And I think the video platform component will help us to add a wider audience. And I think it's natural for speakers that they don't just want to have their voice. They want to practice the art of live. And what a better way to leverage technology to share the things that we can all learn from. And I live in a world where I believe in abundance, and I give a lot of stuff away for free. And what is so exciting about Speaker Hub is that it helps people get the experience that they need to get past the Hollywood conundrum. And this is what I think I've always been so excited to help people through. The problem is you can't get the gig if you don't have the experience, but you can't get the experience if you don't have the gig. And so for those speakers who are passionate, who have stories to show, who want to make a difference and impact, if they can't get those gigs to get the credibility to get the next gigs, it doesn't work. And Speaker Hub is a spot where you can find that. It's a spot where you can showcase without investing too much money into building a brand as you are developing it. And when you let people follow your journey and admit, I'm beginning, I'm here, that's the real deal. And from what I said from the very beginning, I was wrong when I did it first, because I was like, I'm the best speaker in the world. And they're like, no, you're not. So I'd rather you say, I want to be the best speaker in the world, or I want to share this to a million people, or I want to get my framework out there so other people can use it, and then help people follow your journey. And you do that, they'll get to know you. If they like you, great. If not, no big deal. And then that builds a foundation for trust, and people trust you, whether they're an event planner, whether they're a client, whether they're a referral partner, whether they're another speaker. And at the end of the day, we have to build trust to do good business, because you can't download trust. And that, my friend, is a stick figure drawing.
No, I mean, dude, I'm sitting here and I'm just thinking, I'm like, man, I never thought about that Hollywood conundrum thing, right? And I think podcasting, being a guest on a podcast, is a way to kind of let people try you out, so you can send.
Well,
that
wait.
podcast
What's the next best thing to having your own boat?
being on somebody else's? That may be before that.
Yeah, right. Okay. Now,
Like,
same
I
line
don't
of
have
questioning.
to pave it.
It doesn't break on you. You don't have to pay for it, right? And you know what boat stands for? There's two definitions. One is bring on another 1,000, and the other one is bring on another task. And they both work well together. But the best thing next to owning a boat is having a friend with a boat, or being on someone else's boat. Now, what's the next best thing to having your own podcast?
Being on somebody else's.
Exactly. You don't have to produce it. You can just get to show up. I'm telling you, I love being here because you're the one producing this. I just get to hang out and be a guest. Like, this is it. Like, it's work to put these things on, right? But
100%.
I've been on hundreds, if not probably 1,000 shows as a guest, and I love it because I just show up, they do the scheduling, and then I just get to show up and be myself. So that is also why I think I'm super excited about you taking Speaker Hub to the next level. And I think that getting them an early, I call this success stacking. If you want to get featured in Forbes, right? You don't get featured in Forbes first. You might get on a low-level guest blog, and then you use that to get as a guest on a podcast. Use that to get on a bigger one, and then use that to convince somebody to cover you. And it's a find an opportunity, crush the opportunity, share the opportunity, use it to find another opportunity. And being a guest on a podcast, like sailing on someone's boat, just is the glory to get you the experience and the attention to build, and then practice, and then start your own so you can invite people onto your boatcast.
That's it. We call it the speaker flywheel, right? Of using smaller gigs to get larger ones. So you hit it right on the head. You hit on something else. I don't know if we want to talk about it yet, but we got a secret project. You mentioned live. We got a secret project we're working on that should, when do you think? Next year? Next summer sometime? When do you think
I'm ready to go.
thing?
Let's go. Because
no, not the video thing. I'm talking about the in-person thing we talked about.
I understand that. I've been ready to go for this for a while. I've been working towards, so many people want to do a live session. They want to do these workshops. There's so much to learn. And imagine if you brought some of these speakers that you learn so much, you bring them together and you put on an in-person event that can be in different spots around the world. And if those spots happen to be next to sailing locations, I'm not going to lie, that's also a bonus.
No, I think early 2025, we're going to have our first live event for World of Speakers. We want to really bring that name to life, where we're doing events around the world to bring our customers. Only about 20% of Speaker Hub's customers are in the United States. So we want to be able to have live events around the world to be able to invite them in. And I'm glad Ryan wants to do that, because I don't have the time.
Wait, what's better than meeting somebody who's a guest on a podcast by listening to them?
Meeting them in person and doing the podcast.
Boom. Right?
Right.
Again, like, I think we're craving experiences. And as technology becomes more and more predominant and available and useful, it only increases the value of the in-person time to do the real work. And when it comes to speaking, it's one thing to like speak through a microphone, through the internet, and in a very limited box. This This is as limited as I've felt in a long time. I feel trapped, right? So having something where people can get together and build community and build the relationships and maybe some partnerships that might turn into some sponsorships. Anyways.
No, I think it makes sense.
Again.
One last question. Are you an introvert or extrovert?
I'm a gingervert.
What is that?
I'm an extrovert for sure. And I always come up with, I'm famous for coming up with words. So usually in my podcast, there'll be a couple things I'll be like, wait, what if we called that, but that was the first time I ever called myself a gingervert, but I kind of like it.
Okay. Well, hey man, that's cool. I guess gingervert is a redhead extrovert.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm also a rapper, by the way. People
go ahead, come on. You shouldn't have said that. We got to close out with a freestyle.
All right. Well, this is about my book, Ditch the Act, and a lot about what we're talking about. So let me actually wrap this thing whole up here. Here is the deal. Let me give it to you real. The key to connection is to learn to reveal, because you are not perfect and neither am I. And that is the exact reason why we see eye to eye, because everybody's different, but we are all the same. To be perfectly imperfect is how you win the game. And if you only showcase good and do not share the bad, you will miss connections that you never knew you had. Facegram, Telegram, are you LinkedIn? Are you snapping out a TikTok trying to fit in? Stop worrying about everybody else's podcast and focus on being your authentic self, because when you learn to ditch the act, it opens up a window so that people... I don't have a really good one for the end there. Let me try it again. When you learn to ditch the act and learn to be yourself, it opens up the windows to have people help you out. And that's it.
Incredible. Ryan, I didn't know you had these skills, man. We got to...
I got enough for an EP, bro. I got a sustainability rap. I got a startup rap. I got all kinds of stuff. That's it. It's man. Public speaking at the highest
rap
form.
Name. What's your rap name?
I'm the Ginger MC, bro. Search hashtag. You know what's funny? For a while, my business card, and this is when I was really tweeting a lot. I had, close to 500,000 followers at one point, and I was just all over it. My whole business card was a little sliver, and it only had a stick figure on one side, one of my stick figure drawings. On the back side, it just says hashtag Ginger MC. Straight up. I'd be like, you want to know about me? Just Google hashtag Ginger MC on any platform. You'd see me in action. You'd see me on stage. You could Google. I haven't used it in a few years, but I am the Ginger MC.
Well, there it is. That's your homework, guys. Google Ginger MC. Follow Ryan. Go to Ryan.
And you can find me. Yeah, Ryan.online. A very, very easy URL. If you know my name, Ryan. Ryan.online.
No, it's incredible. Well, this is the first time a gingervert has ever been interviewed, and I'm glad we're able to do it. Thanks again, man.
Paving the way for all the other gingers out there. And guess what, Ron? Today and every other day, you can be an honorary ginger too. Congratulations.
I got to grow some hair. I don't have any hair.
Ginger's like, I'm losing my hair too. Okay, bro. So we can't have that be a part of the definition, right? Now, I do see we both kind of have freckles, but being a ginger is more than that. It's just the energy. It's the life force. It's being optimistic. It's being positive. It's getting to that 8th episode. It's giving yourself credit for whoever you are, and just go. People who like and love you will flock to you only if you give them a chance to get to know you.
So I got it. I'm a black guy with freckles. So maybe I'm a ginger snap, like the cookies.
Oh! Well, actually, that is a snap on that. I do have a whole bunch of clips and series that I put together called Ginger Snips, and they're little pieces of what I say. So I have ginger snips. You are a ginger snap. This is great.
Thanks again, Ryan. That's funny, man. Talk to you later.
All right. See you, buddy.